La experiencia que tenía uno de ganador, como tenía muy poca, pues mira.
Sí, ahí se te ve en el podio, la gente, buen ambiente, Pedro Torres con el maillot de la montaña rojo. Y luego lo que yo no me acordaba, Freddy Maertens con ese maillot naranja de líder de la Vuelta a España.
Claro, porque me patrocinaba el maillot de líder butano, gas butano, y entonces el maillot era butano.
Welcome back to the Cycling Iceberg Podcast, everyone. That was another Spanish audio clip on the 1977 Vuelta, the Vuelta of Freddy Maertens. Many people have asked me why there have been so many Spanish audio clips recently, and that's simply because in the early days of the Vuelta, the only archive footage I can really find of those days is from the Spanish TV, because that is the only TV station that broadcasted the Vuelta. It was not internationally appealing. We've covered that in 2 episodes ago when we discussed the early days of the Vuelta. It was not a big race, it is mainly Spanish. You're lucky to find any archive footage of that at all, but this is still a great story, so let's dive right into the action. The death of Spanish dictator Francisco Franco in 1975 nearly marked the end of the Vuelta. Franco, like many dictators, had used big sporting events to bolster his popularity. Without him, Spain was struggling to transition into a democracy, and the Vuelta grappled with its finances and prestige. Those two were highly correlated. The race had always been the least important of the 3 Grand Tours, but the situation worsened after 1974. Without the dominant backing of Franco, there was not enough money. Champions further started avoiding the race as the time between the Vuelta and the Giro was reduced to just 5 days. Many believed this wasn't enough, and as a result, the 1975 and 1976 editions of the Vuelta were won by relatively unknown riders. In 1975, Agustin Tamases won, and a year later, it was José Pacerdona. In an attempt to revive the Vuelta, kind of in a all-or-nothing move to save the legacy of the race, the organizers spent almost their entire budget in 1977 to secure that Belgian world champion Freddy Maertens would take the start. A year prior, the Belgian had been the star of the Tour de France. He'd won 7 stages and the green jersey. Maertens was presented with a deal really too good to refuse. He agreed and brought his Flandria team to Spain, where there were a total of 7 teams comprising 10 riders at the start. 70-rider peloton. Not that big. The organizers wanted Maertens to win the Vuelta. Therefore, to accommodate the classic type rider, the course avoided the high mountains and featured large bonifications at every sprint stage finish. Maertens wanted to avoid having this used to discredit him. He argued that this, just as in the Giro, was meant to attract Moser to the race. He wanted that if he won, there would be no asterisk next to his name. Maertens got off to a flying start in the Vuelta. He won the 8-kilometer prologue and took the orange leader's jersey. In this jersey, he sprinted to victory in stages 1 and 2. Then, stage 4 was a time trial, but he crashed into a photographer on the course, which cost him the win. The 25-year-old Belgian, who had already won more than 200 races at this point in his career, hit back the following days. He won 5 stages in a row, an astonishing feat. All his wins came either from a small breakaway on a medium mountain stage or from a mass sprint. After 10 stages, he had racked up 8 stage wins already. On May 7th, Maertens won 2 stages. In the morning he won a short time trial, while in the afternoon he won the bunch sprint. All bonifications had given him a massive lead ahead of the Queen stage the following day. His only remaining GC rivals were climbers Domingo Perunera from Cas and Miguel Maria Lasa from Teca. These climbers knew there were just few opportunities for them in the mountains to put Maertens under attack. So that's what they did in stage 12, to Santa Magriada de Montbui. However, they never got away. Maertens was simply too good. He finished with his rivals and added to his GC lead the following day by winning stage 13. There was one day in which Maertens struggled. That was stage 15. On the 9-kilometer climb to Formigal, where the finish was set, Perunera and Lassa desperately attacked the Belgian. However, in this attempt, they really played all or nothing. They put all their cards on the table, and that resulted in them fading on the final part of the climb. First, Lassa got dropped by Maertens, and later Pernera got dropped as well, although he said he choked on his bottle of sparkling wine. Maertens tied the record for the most stage wins in a single Vuelta the following day. In stage 16, he took his 12th stage win, equaling the record previously held by Delo Rodriguez. Maertens wanted to beat the record in Bilbao the following day, but Basque independence protesters tried to block the Vuelta. The Guardia Civil cleared the roads and led riders through a road covered with nails, but eventually it was Luis Alberto Ordiales who won the stage. Stage 18 was too hard for Maertens, so that left just the 19th and final stage for him to secure his record-breaking 13th stage win. With over 100 kilometers to go, he set up an echelon with his teammates. They were joined by TK riders Lassa and Klaus-Peter Thaler. The TK team wanted to win the team classification, which was led by the other major Spanish team, CAS. In an interesting move, TK paid Flandria 250,000 francs to work with them until the finish. There was obviously no stopping this leading group with these two teams cooperating. Maertens attacked at the end to win the stage. In doing so, he led the Vuelta from start to finish and also secured the points classification next to those, of course, record-breaking 13 stage wins. 5 days after the Vuelta finished, Maertens started in the Giro. He didn't think 5 days wasn't enough, and it showed in his performance. He won 7 out of the first 11 stages before he crashed out of the race. His record of 13 stage wins in a single Grand Tour still stands in 2025. Maertens, for me, is probably the biggest what-if rider ever in cycling. This was clearly a young man on his way to a great future in the cycling sport. He made his debut in the Tour of Flanders in 1973 at his super young age. He had barely turned 20 years old. He finished second. Then from there, the stars started to rise, in the classics but also in the Grand Tours. 75 he won Gent-Wevelgem, something he repeated the year after. 76 he also won the Amstel Gold Race. At some point he was up there in the Tour of Flanders but got disqualified. So he was really putting his name forward as one of the next stars. As I alluded to, he'd already won 200 races by his 25th birthday. He made his Grand Tour debut in the 1976 Tour de France. He won the prologue, 7 more stages after that, finished 8th in GC despite not really being a climber. He won the green jersey. Then we had the Vuelta, 13 stage wins. That Giro, 7 stage wins. That makes, in the span of 3 straight Grand Tours, his first 3 Grand Tours, 28 stage wins. That's just absolutely absurd. But then came that crash in the 1977 Giro, with which we just ended the story. He never really recovered from that. It was the beginning for the end from him. Sure, a year later he came back to the Tour, he won 2 stages and the green jersey, but that for a rider of his caliber was just seen as a petty prize, the green jersey. 2 stage wins, if you look at where he came from, wasn't really all that good. He kind of also got drawn into the wrong circuit. He had the wrong people advising him, not necessarily in terms of doping use, but more in terms of money. He was very well paid, obviously, as such a future superstar. He had, after all, already been world champion as well. But poorly advised, he made wrong investments. He needed to sell his house, sell a lot of the stuff he owned. He got chased by the tax institutions in Belgium. Really a big fall for a champion of that caliber. And he only had one short revival in 1981. He returned to the Tour, winning 5 stages and another green jersey. He became world champion at the end of that year, but that was really just a super short revival. After that crash in 1977 in the Giro, it only went downhill for him. We can only wonder what Freddy Maertens could have become if he had recovered better from that crash, or if that crash hadn't happened in the first place.